Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm proud to be in Cameroon today to give a presentation on the regulatory and legislative framework for migration worldwide and in Africa, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll start by looking at the introduction. Sorry for that. Okay, we know that in most cases, the role of migrant workers in any development of host countries has actually gained a lot of recognition. Now, towards this end, the international migration has become very important, and it is one of the fundamental features of a globalizing world. Ladies and gentlemen, you find that one of the major opportunities for development and a challenge for governance and social cohesion is as a result of international migration. You find that in most cases, one of the causes of international migration is the search by youth migrants to be engaged in remunerated, I'll repeat, to be engaged in remunerated and gainful employment. If you look at what is happening these days, be it in Kenya, be it in Cameroon, or any African country, you'll find that most of the youth that we have are trying to look for jobs outside their countries. This is due to the fact that in most cases, most of our countries do not have enough job opportunities for the youth. That is why you'll find most of our youth moving from Kenya to Uganda, to Rwanda, to the Gulf region, and other parts of the world, just to look for jobs. And as I've said, it is because jobs are not readily available in our countries. Now you find that this, in most cases, could be as a result of skills mismatch. Most of our youth go to universities, go to colleges, they take some courses, but after they are through with those courses, they hardly get jobs. As I've said, this is due to the skills mismatch. So they have to look for opportunities outside our countries where their skills can actually be accepted. Now, you find that in Kenya, we have a regulatory framework. If you come to Kenya, you realize that the bulk of the Kenyan migrant labor is mainly destined to the Middle East, the one that we call the Gulf. Africa. You'll find that most of the youth that we have do not want to work in Africa. They want to go outside Africa. because they think that is where they can get better remuneration. And also, to some lesser extent, prestige. It is prestigious to work outside Africa. This has become a big problem. Now, you also find that some Kenyan professionals are actually migrating to the USA, Britain, Germany, Canada, and Australia. This is because that's where most of their skills are required, and they get better remuneration. Now, the Kenyan Migrant Labor Regulatory and Legislative Framework caters for all regions that may receive Kenyan migrant workers. And to bring this into perspective, we are going to consider 3 regions that, once we look at these 3 regions, you'll be in a position to see why Kenya has decided to come up with a regulatory framework that will cater for its people. These 3 areas are: 1, the Gulf region; 2, the East African Community, commonly referred to as EAC; the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, this is the IGAD. Now, I'll start with the Gulf region. You'll find that most of our young people, the youth, are actually going to the Gulf region to work in those areas. But most of them work as domestic workers. So you'll find that most of our girls go to Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates. There are others who are skilled and get jobs in those areas, but to a lesser extent. So if you go to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and United Arab Emirates, you'll find most of our domestic workers working there. And we refer to most of these people as unskilled workers, or others are semi-skilled, because lately we've decided that anybody going to work in the Gulf region must be trained. In my next presentation tomorrow, I'll give you some insights on the kind of training that we are giving to domestic workers so that they can become competitive in the areas where they go to work. Now, you'll find that in the Gulf region, and especially for domestic workers, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has developed a system that we refer to as Musanet. This Musanet system is meant to be used when it comes to the recruitment of domestic workers, and this recruitment through Musanet must be done through accredited private employment agencies. Therefore, if we have some private employment agencies that are not registered, that are not accredited by the National Employment Authority, they cannot use this system at all. The aim of using Musanet is to make sure that the girls training, the time of boarding the plane, the time of arrival, whether the girl has been received by the agent on the other side or not, the system will tell. And you find that the contract is for 2 years. So after 2 years, the agent in Kenya will contact the other agent in Saudi Arabia to know whether the contract can be renewed or not. Therefore, if any domestic worker happens to go to Saudi Arabia, that person must work in the family where she has been referred to by the agent. Those girls cannot change houses. Now, you find that, again, through this Musanet system, other semi-skilled workers can be uploaded. The system also accepts other semi-skilled workers. So what I'm trying to say is that in the Gulf region, Saudi Arabia has really trying to manage the recruitment of domestic workers in Kenya. We are hoping that other countries will follow suit, like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and any other country that may have bilateral agreement with us. So this Musanet system actually came into operation in January this year, 2019. And it was after concerted efforts, intense negotiations, and give and take agreements. Then the next one is the East African community. Now, you find that the concept of migration in East Africa can actually be traced way back to pre-colonial era. And this migration was actually characterized by the non-existence of boundaries, as we know in the contemporary world. Ladies and gentlemen, in East Africa, there existed a strong interaction of societies, free movement of persons and goods, and therefore, this state of affairs was facilitated by strong cultural and tribal linkages. So these linkages actually forged what we are talking of the strong bondages, and it was actually reinforced by barter trade between various clans. You find that with the creation of the former East African community way back in 1967, and the treaty that was signed between Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, the free movement of persons within the region was ensured as one of the key elements of cooperation, because cooperation is very important. But it was unfortunate that in 1977, there were some political differences between the partner states, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And therefore, the community, the East African community broke. They decided to, those three countries decided to part ways. But after a period of about 2 decades, the three countries now, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, renewed some efforts to restore the past glory. There was that glory. which broke. That past glory of the East African community. And therefore, the governments of the three countries made commitments to establish their ties, the good ties that were there before. And this effort returned to the rebirth of the East African community in 1999 with the signing of the Treaty for the Establishment of East African Community. There was need of doing these things because people continued to migrate from one country to another, and you find that most of us were suffering because to move from Kenya to Tanzania became a problem because there was no treaty. There was a lot of harassment. Tanzanians coming to Kenya and some problems because the East African trade was not there. Therefore, in 1989, the signing of the treaty for the establishment of the East African community was actually done. Therefore, the three countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, negotiated or talked to the other countries, that is Rwanda and Burundi. And therefore, Rwanda and Burundi joined the East African community in 2007, and therefore we became a 5-member regional economic bloc. And therefore, these partner states agreed or guaranteed free movement of workers who are citizens of these countries. And the treaty actually provided for the entitlement of workers in regard to application for employment. If you're in Kenya and you want to apply for employment in Uganda, you could be allowed. If you're in Burundi and you happen to apply for a job in Kenya, you couldn't get it. Rwanda the same, just because of the treaty. So, this free movement in the partner states was around, and contracts of employment could be enforced, and workers are allowed to enjoy the rights and freedoms of association.
5 minutes.
Okay. Therefore, I'll move very fast now because I only have 5 minutes and I have to stick to the 5 minutes. I don't want to be offside. The third one is IGAD, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development. The member states of IGAD, for those of us who do not know, are Djibouti, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Kenya, Somalia, the Sudan, Southern Sudan, and Uganda. And therefore, there was a meeting in Uganda that was held in 2015 in Kampala. And that meeting expressed that for all the members of IGAD, they should actually collectively ensure effective protection of economic, social, and cultural rights of labor migrants, particularly the right to retain passports and other travel documents. You know that sometimes you can go to some other countries, at the moment you arrive, the first thing that is taken is your what? Your passport or any travel document, so that you cannot leave that employer. So these member states agreed that that kind of behavior should come to an end. They should not be there. And therefore, the member states are supposed to safeguard the human rights of labor migrants. Now, how does Kenya manage youth and migration? You find that the management of youth and migration in Kenya entails the application of various we have integration measures for returnees, and 4, we have the development of labor migration policy and labor migration bill. I'll start with the labor migration data. Now, you find that data that is timely, data that is reliable is very important for employment creation, in job search, the matching of job seekers, and also making informed choices on foreign employment. Without data, there's a problem. You cannot do anything, or whatever you do will end up eroded, or you do the wrong things. And therefore, you find that most countries in Africa, not Kenya alone, lack labor market information on the number, location, experience, and resources possessed by the migrants. It's not possible to tell in other countries. For these people, you end up finding that recruitment agencies are taking so many people, but they cannot. This is a challenge. And this is to capture data on activities of all recruitment agencies, employers, and job seekers that will help in maintaining an up-to-date labor migration data. The system is being linked to the National Labor Market Information System that is now for the whole country, but as an authority, we've decided to create our own so that people can get to know more about the data. Next, international agreements and negotiation of bilateral labor agreements. Kenya has actually ratified and domesticated ILO Convention number 143 on migrant workers, that is the supplementary provisions, and ILO Convention 97 on migration for employment convention. But we are yet to ratify and domesticate key international conventions, including the Convention on the Protection of the Rights of all Migrant Workers and members of their families, the ILO Convention number 181 on private employment agencies. So we are yet to ratify some of these. And in areas where we send our youth, our people, Kenya has signed 3 bilateral labor agreements with the government of Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. Therefore, when we give certificates to private employment agencies, we clearly state that they can only take people
Please, Mr. NJUE.
to areas where there is
Le temps est terminé.
bilateral agreement. Give me 2 minutes. I'm concluding. So, what are we trying to do? We are trying to fast track some of the draft bilateral agreements with key destinations. We are trying to continuously identify other key destinations or destination countries and initiate negotiations on bilateral agreements. We are doing that. Next, reintegration measures for returnees. At times, migrant workers face problems of reintegration to their societies of origin and need some of the psychosocial assistance and reintegration training. So, we are coming up with some collaborations with employment agencies and other stakeholders to ensure that those returnees, the ones who are returning, can actually be taken care of in a good manner. We are coming up with strategies for that. Again, lastly now, we are taken care of. In conclusion, now, the institutions and structures dealing with issues of labor migration in the countries concerned should coordinate mutually on this aspect. This will not only be limited to the countries affected, but also to the international and regional sphere. This boils down to the sharing of information and the policy issues amongst the countries, which will actually enhance harmony in labor migration on all the aspects of development. Thank you.